Welcome to Watch Symposium, the ultimate guide to the watch shops of Nakano. How do you get to them? Well, go to Nakano Station, go out the north exit. There are only two exits, south and north. You want to walk under this awning. If it's a rainy day, it's great because you're not going to get wet. Cross the street and enter this shopping arcade. Nakano Broadway, which is where we're headed, is at the end of this, but there are a few shops on the way. One of the first on the right is this. I'll put the links to all these shops in the description of this video. Just to get everybody up to speed, tourists don't have to pay the 10% sales tax if they have their passport with them. I'm going to put the tax-free prices in USD. Of course, you can always use cash, but these shops also take major credit cards, but a lot of the smaller shops will charge you a service fee if you use a credit card. And as you can see, that's the case with this shop. Now we're going to focus on GMTs and gold watches because those are the preferences of the gentleman that commissioned this video. Also on the right side, a bit further towards Nakano Broadway, Kitamura is more of a camera store, but as you can see, they sell watches too. They have this highly complicated IWC. It's a chronograph, and it must be a perpetual calendar. I see the year on the dial there. Now there is a massive amount of watches in Nakano, and this is just a small fraction, so keep that in mind. Here's the transitional Kermit, as it's known, the 16610 LV 50th anniversary sub. This has the sought-after Fat 4 bezel insert. A box and papers all black 16700 tritium dial hollow and link bracelet, and this would have the holes case. Another Fat 4 Kermit with box and papers. Zenith's answer to the Rolex John Mayer, a solid yellow gold green dialed chronograph. This shop is a little further down towards Nakano Broadway on the right side. Note the ridiculous life-size superhero statue. A Rolex day date with a very cool wood dial. The prior shop also had one of these. If you like GMTs and yellow gold watches, this is the one for you. This is a 1675 with a nipple dial. No box, no papers, just the watch only, but what a beautiful watch. A steel 1675 and an early one. You know that because of the small 24-hour hand. Tritium dial. It looks to have the original tritium hands, all with a nice patina. An amazing and instant three-piece collection, but how do you stir your coffee? This shop has you covered. A solid yellow gold Speedmaster with a champagne dial. Another day date, this time with the Onyx dial, which apparently are becoming really popular. You can see the box in the background. Full set, I'm pretty sure. The viewers into Cartier as well. Here's a gold chronograph. The watch company has very sparse stock these days, and when they're not trying to sell a 3185 movement GMT as a 3186 movement GMT, they're trying to sell this one Rolex. Keep walking down the shopping arcade until you get to Nakano Broadway, where the real watch shopping starts. On the first floor, there are a couple of shops. Straight ahead on the left, you have these two shops. They're connected. On the right, non-Rolex pieces. On the left, Rolex pieces. Like this early 90s yellow gold 36mm day date with the mother of pearl diamond dial and an extra dial thrown in. They had this box and papers day date on a leather strap with the green dial. An early 90s solid yellow gold GMT Master 2 with the Surdy dial. Now this piece came with box and papers. If that earlier Zenith didn't do it for you, here's the real thing. Or if you want something a little bit more subtle that flies under the radar, this is an option. A very interesting solid yellow gold Yachtmaster with a mother of pearl dial. Look at that beautiful pinkish dial. Still on the first floor, you go straight ahead. On the right, there are two more shops. Mostly Grand Seiko at this shop. If they do have Rolex, it'll be the modern ones with the premium. But here's the thing, you can't buy a Rolex with a credit card here, only the Grand Seikos. Rolex is here, but only new ones with, of course, the premium, like this box papers, unworn, yellow gold Daytona with the meteorite dial. If you take a right at the escalator and then a left, you'll get to this shop. They specialize in vintage pieces like this GMT root beer. We're back in front of the escalator in front of Daikokuya. You want to take it from the first floor to the third floor, and you'll find a mixture of manga shops and watch shops. Here on the third floor, there are two Watchnian shops, a small one and a big one. This is the small one. A yellow gold day date with a bark bracelet and bark bezel, tapestry dial. Plenty of steel GMTs as well, modern and neo-vintage. Down the hall from the smaller Watchnian on the right side is Renzu. A solid yellow gold date just, which is kind of rare. It's got the onyx dial with the diamond 6 and 9, as does this yellow gold day date. Of this trilogy, which would you go for? I think I'd go for the one on the right, on the leather strap. That's a beautiful dial. Right next to Renzu is the larger Watchnian. Here we have a yellow gold day date. A yellow gold and bejeweled GMT Master 2. Look at that bezel. How do you even use that with a 24-hour hand? Practicality be damned. I believe these are called Beach Daytonas, although I'm sure some people would call them Stella Dial Daytonas. And of the four, which would you go for? I'd probably go for the yellow. I wonder if these were popular when they came out. Well, they're certainly going for quite a price these days. Compared to those Beach Daytonas, this is a bargain. I was just pulling out my credit card when I realized it doesn't have a tachometer, and I need that. Right next to the larger Watchnian is Kamekichi. It's actually two shops. On the left, that's where you'll find the Rolex watches. This is a yellow gold Omega World Time and a yellow gold Omega Speedmaster. This shop specializes in unique vintage and neo-vintage Rolexes. This is a two-tone 1675 from 1971. Note the nipple dial. This is a 1680 red sub. It's got box and papers, tritium of course. The tritium has a nice patina and everything looks original. If you like your watch shopping with a cranky dude behind the counter, this is the shop for you. A solid gold Zenith chronograph. A trio of ceramic GMTs with some kind of cool Rolex artwork in the background. 3 more ceramic GMTs. Interesting that the one with gold in it is the cheapest. A white, gold, blue bezeled, black dialed Submariner. If you like older watches, and especially if you like working on your own watches, a lot of good options here. A lot of these pieces need some work, so if you're good at tinkering, this could be good for you. A solid yellow gold oyster date. In this shop, you'll find a lot of older watches, lesser brands. When it comes to Rolex, the older, unloved, unappreciated models, the 34mm Rolex watches, maybe a date just, Oyster Perpetuals, Oyster dates, things like that. You're not going to find subs, GMTs, Daytonas. None of the top tier models are going to be in this shop, but they do have parts for those watches like bezel inserts, dials, crystals, bracelets. I see a date just bezel, but none of the actual professional models themselves. In this shop, you'll mostly find new, barely worn or unworn modern pieces. So they're not going to have any neo-vintage pieces, definitely not any vintage pieces. They pretty much are flipping what people acquire at the authorized dealers. This is probably one of my favorite yellow gold modern pieces, and of course the Smurf, which a couple years ago this was selling for the same price, so you'd think it would have gone up more. There are quark branches all over Japan. They've got a good reputation, but you pay for it. They're quite expensive. They're not so expensive when it comes to these relatively standard pieces, but when you're talking 4-digit vintage kind of special things like older GMTs and red subs and red sea dwellers, then prices can get pretty crazy. Although they've started coming down. You know, the peak was in May of 2022. And so these days, even special and unique quark pieces seem almost competitively priced. Good Watch specializes in 4-digit vintage Rolexes. Here's an early 90s tritium solid gold bluesy. Beautiful watch, head only of course. All I can think is, where the hell is the bracelet? I can imagine how much that would cost to replace. I mean, a steel bracelet is like $1,500. A gilt dial 1675 from the 1960s. Of course, you got that small 24-hour hand and the chapter ring, and it's a tropical dial as well. Another gilt dial 1675 from The 1960s, this is a little later than the earlier one. This doesn't have the chapter ring. A yellow gold day date from 1962. Looks to have a pie pan dial. He also has a large collection of bezel inserts, dials, bracelets, parts. Jackroad is one of the largest shops and it's got a big collection of vintage GMTs and subs. Here's a cream dial Explorer 2 16550. Watch only, no box, no papers. One of the coolest things about this watch is that the hands and the gold surrounds on the indices aren't painted black like on the 16570. A lot of older, competitively priced pieces here. In fact, you remember Festus? When he bought the cheapest Rolex he could find in Japan, it was at this shop. A solid yellow gold Speedmaster. I can't remember the price, but I want to say it was around 30,000. I checked out this watch for a viewer. He pulled the trigger on it and is reserved for him. Matthew, say hello to your future watch. Is doing well, hanging out. They don't often have neo-vintage GMTs, but had a couple today. Another GMT of sorts, a solid yellow gold Sky Dweller. It really is a big shop, and what you're seeing here is just a small percentage of the watches in the shop. Universal Value specializes in Omega Speedmasters. In fact, this is where my friend Mark Antimate got his Speedmaster. Here's a Speedmaster Alaska project. A Box and Papers Speedmaster, first Omega in space. A Speedmaster 57 Trilogy. Wow, listen to me. It actually sounds like I know what I'm talking about. Hey, I know what this one is. The new one with the white dial. I just don't know if it has a premium on the price. Our last shop on the 3rd floor of Nakano Broadway. A lot of bang for buck here. And an all-black ceramic. And that concludes our tour of the watch shops and a very small percentage of the watches of Nakano. Thank you to the gentleman who commissioned this video. Guys, let me know what you think. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.